Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into something that's, well, kind of puzzled people for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, why is it so hard to get everyone on the same page? To do what's best for everyone, even when it's obviously in their own best interest.
Right.
We're going to be looking at this whole idea of collective action, and we've got two really interesting sources to help us unpack it all.
Okay.
One's this academic article that really gets into the nitty-gritty of the theory,
Uh-huh.
and then we've got this opinion piece that, well, throws in some really interesting cultural perspectives.
Oh, cool.
It's a big question.
Huge.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Climate change, political polarization,
Yeah.
pandemics, all these huge things we're facing today, they all basically boil down to, like, can we cooperate? Can we work together on a large scale?
Exactly. And to really get why that's so tricky, we need to understand this whole concept of like what they call collective action problems. The academic article, it defines them as situations where individuals, like when they act rationally in their own self-interest, it can actually backfire and like harm the whole group.
It's kind of like, that prisoner's dilemma thing from game theory.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
Okay, so picture this, right? You've got two suspects.
Okay.
They're being interrogated, but separately, right? Now, if they both keep their mouths shut.
They both get a lighter sentence.
Exactly. But here's the thing. If one of them rats the other out, while the other guy's staying silent,
Oh, yeah.
the rat, he walks free, no charges. But the silent one, he gets slammed with the maximum penalty.
Oh, wow.
So for each person on their own, the most logical thing to do is betray the other guy. Even though if they cooperated, they'd both be better off.
That's crazy.
It really shows you how sometimes doing what seems smart for one person can lead to a total disaster for everyone.
Yeah, and the article actually uses mask wearing, like during COVID, as a real-life example of this.
Oh, interesting. Even when government stepped in, like trying to be that, what they call external authority, trying to get everyone to do the right thing, it was still super hard to get everyone on board.
It's wild, right? Even when there's a clear and present danger,
Yeah.
people don't always band together.
It's like they don't see the bigger picture.
Exactly. And then this opinion piece we've got, it brings in another layer.
Okay.
It looks at how different cultures approach this whole mask wearing thing.
Oh, that's fascinating.
They contrast like China and Taiwan, where pretty much everyone started wearing masks super quickly.
Right.
And then they compare that to, Western countries, places like Australia even, where mask adoption was way lower.
I'm surprised about Australia. They're so close to Asia geographically, you'd think.
Yeah, you'd think they'd be more similar, right? But it seems like they took a more, Western approach. And the piece, it kind of suggests that this difference might have something to do with, they use the term whiteness. Okay, that's a term I've heard. But
Yeah, it can be kind of loaded, right?
yeah. So, like, what are they actually getting at with whiteness in this context?
Basically, they're talking about this whole set of cultural norms and values.
Okay.
Things like prioritizing the individual, autonomy, and often like this sense of exceptionalism, which kind of stems from historical power structures.
Okay.
And this ties back to what the academic article was saying about individualistic cultures struggling with collective action.
So it's not just about, like, individual personalities.
Right.
It's about these bigger cultural forces that shape how whole societies respond to these kinds of challenges.
Exactly. It's like these deeper currents.
Yeah, I get you.
And the piece argues that, this historical baggage of whiteness might actually contribute to people feeling disconnected from the collective good.
Okay.
Which makes it harder to put actions that benefit the group above, what individuals might want.
That's a pretty big claim. Like, how do they go from those historical power structures to what people are doing today? It can't just be, this culture is individualistic, so no masks for them.
Oh, no, definitely not.
Right.
It's way more complex than that, and the piece acknowledges that.
Yeah.
They actually dig into the historical context, exploring how things like colonialism.
Yeah.
Well, that fostered this sense of superiority and entitlement, which might make it harder for people to see themselves as part of, a bigger interconnected whole.
So they're saying that these historical experiences might have actually shaped, like, psychological mechanisms that make it harder for certain groups to get on board with collective action.
Yeah, that's one of the arguments they're making.
Okay, interesting.
They also point to, like, the legacy of individualism in Western political thought.
Right.
Which often puts personal liberty above, responsibility to the community.
That makes me think about the whole debate around climate change, you know? It seems like the countries that are most resistant to taking action together, they're often the ones that really emphasize individual freedom and economic growth.
Yeah, that's a really interesting connection.
Yeah.
And it actually brings us to another fascinating point that the academic article brought up.
Okay.
It seems like the more complex a society gets, the harder it actually becomes to get everyone to act together.
Wait, so the more connected we become,
Right.
the less likely we are to cooperate. That doesn't seem to make sense.
It is kind of paradoxical, right?
Yeah.
But the article, it actually gives a pretty good explanation.
Okay.
So in really complex societies, the consequences of our individual actions, they become kind of spread out and harder to see.
So, like, I get that climate change is a problem, but I don't see how me driving my car is directly contributing to the glaciers melting on the other side of the world.
Exactly. And that disconnect, it makes it easier to focus on what benefits you right now, instead of thinking about the long-term well-being of the whole group.
Yeah.
It's like we're constantly bombarded with information and choices.
Right.
So it's tough to see the bigger picture and how our own little actions fit into it all.
And it's not even just about physical distance, right? Like,
Yeah.
in a society as diverse as ours, it's hard to even say who the collective even is.
Oh, definitely.
We've got so many different groups, each with their own priorities and values.
Exactly. And that fragmentation, it makes it really hard to get everyone to agree on anything and get them moving in the same direction.
So we've got this perfect storm, right? Cultural norms that tell us to look out for, number one, historical baggage that shapes how we see things, and then just the sheer complexity of modern life, where it's hard to see the consequences of our actions.
Yeah.
No wonder it feels like such a struggle to get everyone to pull together.
It's a real uphill battle.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're programmed, to put our own little world first, even when it's not the best thing for the bigger group.
Yeah, there's definitely a push and pull there between wanting to do our own thing and needing to act together.
Yeah.
The opinion piece actually makes a really interesting point about how this plays out differently in various cultures.
Okay.
They talk about how in a lot of Asian cultures, there's this stronger emphasis on social harmony and responsibility to the group.
So, like, that whole saving face thing, it's not just about you, but about everyone around you.
Right.
Maybe that makes people more willing to cooperate, even if it means giving up some individual freedom.
That's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
The piece also brings up how the experience of colonialism might have led to a different view of authority.
Okay.
In some cases, resisting colonial powers actually involved collective action and communities coming together.
So it's not that Asian cultures are just naturally more collectivist, but that their history might have shaped different ways of dealing with that tension between individual needs and what the group needs.
Yeah, that's the nuance they're trying to get at.
Yeah, it's not about saying one is better than the other, right?
Exactly.
It's about understanding how the past can influence how cultures value things and how people act.
Absolutely.
It really makes you think about how we talk about these collective action problems in the first place,
Yeah.
Like if we always frame it as individual sacrifice, no wonder people get defensive.
Right.
What if we talked more about what everyone gains by working together?
That's a key point.
Right.
The academic article actually stresses how important it is to frame things in a way that connects with what people care about. Instead of just doom and gloom, highlight the good stuff that happens when we cooperate.
So instead of, if you don't wear a mask, you're putting others at risk, it's more like wearing a mask helps keep our community healthy and businesses open.
Exactly. That little shift can make a big difference.
I can see that.
The article also talks about appealing to people's sense of fairness,
Okay.
Like if I see you're making an effort, I'm more likely to do the same.
That's where trust comes in, right? If I don't think my neighbors are doing their part, why should I bother?
Absolutely.
Right.
Trust is like the foundation for any kind of collective action to really work. The article talks about transparency and accountability. When people feel like the rules are fair and everyone's playing by them, they're way more likely to cooperate.
And maybe that's where we can learn something from those cultures that emphasize social cohesion. If you can build that sense of shared responsibility of being a community, maybe collective action wouldn't feel like such a chore.
That's a really interesting thought.
Right.
The piece doesn't say one cultural model is the answer,
Right.
but it does encourage us to think critically about how different societies deal with these challenges and what we can learn from each other.
So it's not about saying one culture's got it all figured out. It's about recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all solution to these collective action dilemmas.
Exactly. What works in one place might not work somewhere else.
Right.
The key is to really understand what's going on beneath the surface and adjust our strategies accordingly.
This makes me think about the whole climate crisis, you know? We can't just take a solution that worked in one country and expect it to work everywhere else.
Yeah, every place is different.
We have to consider the specific context, the cultural values, the economic realities.
Absolutely. The article actually emphasizes the need for, like, tailored solutions.
Yeah.
They talk about giving local communities the power to come up with strategies that fit their own needs and challenges.
So instead of these big top-down policies, it's more about giving people the tools to create solutions that actually work for them.
It's about giving them ownership,
Yeah.
making them feel like they're part of the process.
Yeah. If people feel invested, they'll be more likely to support it in the end.
Definitely.
All this feels really relevant to what's happening politically these days. We're so divided, and it seems like every issue turns into this us versus them battle.
Yeah, that polarization makes it way harder to get things done together.
For sure.
The article mentions how social norms play a big role in how we behave. If we can shift those norms towards working together and sharing responsibility, it could have a ripple effect throughout society.
So it's not just about changing individual minds, it's about changing the whole mindset of the group.
It's about the collective consciousness, yeah.
But how do you actually shift social norms in a place that's so fragmented and polarized?
That's a tough one.
It feels like we're all stuck in our own little bubbles, only listening to people we already agree with.
It's a challenge, the article admits that.
Yeah.
But they say that open and honest dialogue is crucial.
Okay.
We need to create spaces where people with different views can come together and actually talk to each other respectfully.
That sounds great in theory, but is it even possible with how the media works today? Everything's so loud and dramatic.
It's definitely not easy.
Right.
But the article points to examples of communities that have actually managed to overcome their differences and work together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, by talking to each other and
Yeah.
collaborating.
That's encouraging. So it's not about pretending everything's fine or that everyone has to agree on everything.
Right.
It's
yeah.
about finding ways to work together despite our differences.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together, even when we don't agree.
Yeah.
The article uses this term, collective intelligence,
Okay.
to describe this ability to use all the different perspectives and knowledge in a group to solve problems.
That's a really powerful idea. It's like our differences, instead of being a roadblock, they can actually be a strength.
Exactly. If we can tap into that collective intelligence, we might be amazed at what we can achieve together.
It's like we need to rethink what strength really means, when we're talking about groups.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not about pushing your own agenda, but about being able to connect with others, understand where they're coming from, and find that common ground.
The whole different way of looking at things.
Right.
And it kind of connects to this idea that the more complex a society gets, the more important these social and emotional skills become. Like, we can't just rely on someone telling us what to do or, everyone acting in their own self-interest to solve these big problems.
Yeah.
We need to tap into those deeper human qualities, like cooperation and empathy.
But how do we actually do that? Cultivate those things in a world that feels so focused on, like, me first.
Right.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed, like nothing you do really matters when you're facing these huge global issues.
It can be daunting, for sure.
Yeah.
But the academic article, it actually offers a little bit of hope.
Okay.
They argue that complexity itself, it can actually make us more resilient and innovative.
Okay. How so?
Think about it like this. You know how interconnected ecosystems, they adapt to change better than, say, a monoculture?
Right. More diverse.
Exactly.
So you're saying that all the different perspectives and experiences within a complex society, that can actually make us stronger.
That's the idea. When you have a bunch of different viewpoints, different ways of approaching a problem, you're more likely to come up with creative solutions.
But to really make use of that diversity, you need open communication and a willingness to collaborate, right?
Definitely.
Which brings us back to dialogue and building trust, like we were talking about before.
Yeah.
We need to make spaces where people feel safe sharing their thoughts, even if they're not the popular opinion.
Safe spaces, yeah.
But it can't just be talk, 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 right?
Oh, no.
At some point, we need to put those words into action.
Absolutely. The article, it stresses the importance of moving from theory to practice.
Okay, so how do we do that?
They talk about trying out new ways of governing.
Okay.
Ways that give individuals and communities more power to be part of the decision-making.
So instead of leaving everything to the experts or politicians, we give people a more direct voice in shaping their own future.
Exactly. Like, think about things like citizen assemblies,
Mm-hmm.
participatory budgeting, or even online platforms where people can share ideas and work together to come up with solutions.
All this is making me picture a very different kind of society.
Yeah.
One that's less top-down, more collaborative, more focused on what's good for everyone, not just what benefits individuals.
It's a big shift in how we think about things.
For sure. But the problems we're facing today, they're so complex and interconnected.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine solving them without that kind of shift.
I agree.
Climate change, inequality, political divisions, these all need collective action on a scale we haven't really seen before.
It's a tall order.
It is a little overwhelming to think about, if I'm honest.
I hear you.
But there's also this glimmer of hope, you know?
Yeah.
If we can learn to embrace all this complexity, build empathy, and trust each other, even when we disagree, maybe we can find a way forward together.
That's the spirit. It's not about having all the answers right now.
Right.
It's about asking the right questions, trying things out, and learning along the way.
Yeah.
The future, it's uncertain, but it's not set in stone.
True.
What we do together will determine which path we take.
So to wrap things up, I want to leave everyone with this thought. What role do you want to play in shaping that future? How can you help build a world that's fairer, more sustainable, where people work together? It's something to think about as we navigate these, well, complicated and challenging times.
Definitely something to ponder.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.